volume up. Welcome, heroes. It is I, your friendly neighborhood Rabbi John Carrier, and I am here for the Jew Curious Show. We're off to a bit of a late start this morning. I'm thinking of now that school's back in season, and by that I mean the public schools, where our family has children deposited for the time being, and started back again this week, and so many folks in the Los Angeles metropolitan area going back to school. So. Good on you, kids. You're probably not watching the show from school or listening as the case may be, but your parents are now free to go. And sorry, I'm just gloating a little bit. It was a fun summer. The kids were in day camp all summer, and now we are back in the school swing of things. But first day of school drop-off is a little bit different than usual, so had to readjust a few things. Also been tinkering with launching, I'm excited, the Jewish Fall Holiday Challenge. So, one thing you can do, I'm on kind of relaxed grooming standards this morning. That's why you can't see my face yet. I was going to go maybe throw some less hangover-looking glasses on. It's after Tisha B'Av, and fast days always mess with me a little bit. Also mess with my facial hair a little bit. So, in just a moment, you're going to see my stubbly face. But happy to see Nawa64 is here. KG Wilcox, thanks, glad you're here. Triggers and Viv, good morning. Very happy to see you here. And Bistachio, I don't know if I've seen Bistachio here this morning. Very glad to see you here. Well, welcome. So maybe it's Bistachio. I don't know how you pronounce it, like bicycle or bicycle. Nawa64 says Boker Tov, Boker or Nawa64. So today, just so many things to talk about. This is an Ask Me Anything show, but you can see by the title that we are going to be talking a little bit about the Jewish fall holidays. Because now that Tisha B'Av is over, it is a dead sprint to Rosh Hashanah. And after that, 10 days approximately is Yom Kippur, and then after that is Sukkot. And Christy B is in the house from San Bernardino, and Triggers and Viv from the desert. We got a little reverb here. The desert of Washington says, can't stay long. We're happy as long as you can be here. So we got the Jewish fall holidays coming up, and I did something last year that turned out to be very popular and certainly very fun to do. And I staged a 31-day fall holiday challenge. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that here in a minute. Long story short, doing it again. And so we've got all these videos set up. And last year, it actually took me about 50 days to get the 31 videos out. But this year, the 31 videos are already made. They're in the can. I will tell you, if you watched my videos last year, you will notice that these are the exact same videos. But I tried to make them somewhat timeless and set them up in this challenge format so that you could have an organized way of learning about the High Holy Days, learning about the festival of Sukkot, and not just those days, but the days leading up to them. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat here, and I'll let you peruse that link while you listen to some tunes. I'm going to turn the music up, and I'm going to go put on my face before I show my face on the camera. So here I am. I'm going to do a little typing. And I want everybody out there who feels like it to go ahead and go to this link. And you'll notice something fun. I'm not going to spoil it for you. You're just going to have to go to this link. We're doing a little something to make this challenge fun. I think it makes it fun. It makes it expensive for me, but hopefully fun for you. So I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm just going to type this link. Here I go, typing. Rabbi, that's me, johncarrier.com/fall. So I put that link in the chat. Go ahead and check that out. Somebody, one of my nice helpers, one of my hero elves here, make sure that link works. If it doesn't, that's embarrassing. But go to that link, make sure it works, and you'll see that it's not just about holiday videos. We're doing something a little fun. If you sign up for the challenge, I'll just drop a hint. If you sign up for the challenge before September the 9th, something special may happen to you. I hope lots of things that are special and blessed and good happen to you, but this is something in particular. Check out that link and see. And I'm going to turn the music up for a little bit while I go put on my face, and I'll be back with you in just a second. So I'm going to put it on the BRB screen. Let's listen to these tunes. And I'll be back in just a second. Music's coming down. Taking a little sip of the move juice. Let's see. Close that pop up. See Naya Shashi is in the house. Let's get on the camera. Relaxed grooming standards be darned. And away we go. I got my Tom Waits voice going on this morning too. Let's see. Let's turn that music off so we can chat. Just us. And go back to the screen. Tell you what happens. Thanks some people for some donations. Say, keep them anonymous today, but I got some really good donations to come in for the new preamp, which should be coming up soon. We're about a third of the way there. But last time we had some people subscribe to the channel, which was great. Helps us out. People throwing bits and cheers and things like that. One of those things you can do in Twitch to show your support and appreciation. And we're about a third of the way to our goal of getting a brand new preamp. The thing that made my voice sound as good as it does. Sorry about that. Kind of threw a rod a couple of weeks ago, and so now I'm on this hinky-dinky USB mic, but we're going to make the best of it. So many good molecules of caffeine in that cup of coffee. I see Naya Shashi has joined us. Welcome. Who else is here? Triggers and Viv. Kay Dixie's in the house. Hugs to my gal friends. So I won't try not to take that personally. But anyway, let's see. We've got Rabbi John. So Kay Dixie says, Rabbi John, 3 lovely people just joined the Jew Curious School. Yay, that's exciting. That's another thing that's happening. So we're speaking of the holidays. So we've got this school going on. There's a link. If you look down in all the linky link areas below this video, one of the things that it says, maybe it says join us or join the school or something like that. We have this thing called the Jew Curious School where it's a private online school that people join for exclusive access. And what you can do is there's a full introduction to Judaism video course, but it's not just a passive video course. You can get into the forums and chat and ask questions about the material all along the way. We've got some deep dive courses in there as well, and I'll come back to that in a second. My favorite thing, let me just say, my second favorite thing. It's hard to pick. It's like picking among my children. They all know they're second place after my wife. But anyway, we we have a weekly Torah study class in there where every week we get together live and study the Torah portion of the week. And of course, all the live classes are recorded, so anybody who's a part of the school can go back in the archive and see something. If maybe it just wasn't on their schedule that they couldn't make when we did it live, but you could always go back and look. And there's like hundreds. I think there's like between 90 and 100 video lessons in the archive. My favorite thing is the community. We've got a great community forum section, people talking to each other, people talking to me talking back to people, not talking back like we say it in the South, but, being nice about it. So we have a great community there, but a couple things going on today. If you're part of the Jew Curious School, I know several people in the chat are, just to kind of give you today's lesson plan at about, let's say, 2:30 Pacific time. We're going to have our weekly Torah class, where we'll be talking about the next parsha, the parsha of this week. And then we are going to be doing a new course. And this is one I'm particularly excited about. I'm excited about all my courses, but first among equals, let's say. Today, we're starting a 4-lesson series or 4-week series in the high holidays. So we're going to be talking about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and not just the holidays themselves, but kind of the preparation for those holidays and the spiritual work of those holidays. These are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are distinct. We have other holidays that celebrate moments in our history. We have holidays celebrating certain events in the Torah, things like, Passover talks about the leaving Egypt. Sukkot talks about the time we were wandering in the desert and God took care of us. Shavuot is about giving the 10 Commandments. So these are sort of biblical events. And then we have holidays that are about subsequent historical events like Purim and Hanukkah. What makes the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur special and distinct among those is that while they are occasions for getting together for community, they're also, I want to say, holidays that help the individual in very profound ways, in ways that maybe the other holidays don't focus on. The days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the time in between is known as the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, or the 10 days of repentance or return, or however you want to celebrate Teshuvah or Tshuva. Sometimes it's pronounced in Ashkenaz. But tshuva is also, for me, a kind of technology of personal growth, a technology of self-improvement. What I mean by technology, it sounds weird talking about ancient stuff that way, but sort of a means of effectuating a goal, right? And so we have this organized, tested way of achieving personal growth, of achieving sort of upgrading your expectations for yourself, achieving repair in relationships between you and other people. And the high holy days are let's say, a method or a curriculum to walk you through improving yourself and improving your relationships with other people, improving maybe how you see yourself, and if you're a God person, and I am, improving your relationship with God. And so when we get into the High Holy Days class in the Jew Curious School, we're not even going to talk about the holidays themselves for a couple of weeks. The first week is the first lesson, I'll say, and how we do this is it's 4 lessons, but we do them live a week apart, and then they're all recorded so you can zip through them in an afternoon if you wanted to. But the first lesson is going to be about the month of Elul. So Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the month of Tishrei in the Hebrew calendar. The month before Tishrei is Elul. And Elul is a month of, let's say, spiritual preparation. The primary activity of Elul is what's known as Heshbon HaNefesh, right? A Heshbon is like, if you go to an Israeli restaurant and ask for the Heshbon, you're asking for the bill, you're asking for the check, right? The accounting of all your falafel and shawarma and hummus. But Heshbon is also sort of the word for accounting, like if you're taking an accounting class or if you're accounting for your taxes or whatever. But in this sense, Heshbon HaNefesh is an accounting for the soul. And so the activity of the whole month leading up to Rosh Hashanah is looking back and saying, okay, what kind of year did I have? What are some things that I'm really proud of? What are some things that I'm less proud of? Right? And how do I maybe make an inventory of that so that I could start planning for a better future? And so first lesson, we're going to be talking about that kind of spiritual preparation and some practical stuff too. I mean, people, if you live close to Jewish communities or if you're involved in Jewish communities, you're already starting to get stuff in the mail from your local synagogues. Sign up for coming to our services. Become a member of our synagogue, get tickets. Like, what does it mean to get tickets for services? It's not a concert or a ball game, right? But they have tickets largely for security purposes, frankly, just to make sure they know everybody who's coming. And, but there's also ways to participate in services without getting those tickets. I'll get into all those practical details in this lesson 1. And then after that, I'm just going to sort of go through this real quick because I want to make sure I get to some good questions today. After that, the second lesson is about. Actually, I messed that up. The second lesson is about Elul. The first lesson is sort of an overview of the holidays and what the kind of work we're supposed to be doing on those holidays. So this is the fun of doing live broadcasting. Sometimes I screw up, and so that's to make sure. 100% sure everybody knows that I'm not a bot. I'm not some kind of I'm not a cartoon here, although sometimes I act like a cartoon character. I wear the same clothes every day, for example. But the first lesson is kind of an overview of the holidays, that kind of spiritual work that I was telling you about. The second lesson is about that preparation, right? And how do you examine yourself? How do you decide what kind of world you want to live in? What kind of person you want to be going into the new year? Also, how you begin that process of tshuva, of making amends for things that you did wrong, making amends between you and God, making amends between you and other human beings, which is critical and some might say even primary to these 10 days of tshuva. And then in the third lesson, we're going to take a deep dive into Rosh Hashanah, sort of talk about the biblical sources of the holiday, how it's evolved over the years, and how it's been observed. It's actually, just fun fact, the words Rosh Hashanah never appear in the Torah. It's called something else. It's not called Rosh Hashanah. It's only later on, hundreds of years later in the Mishnah, that the name Rosh Hashanah starts being used for this holiday that's coming up. But also just what's the service like? And, how is it different from like a regular Shabbat morning services? How many days is Rosh Hashanah? For some, it's a 2-day holiday. And unlike other 2-day holidays, where in some communities it's observed one day, some communities it's observed for 2 days. Rosh Hashanah has remained a 2-day holiday sort of across the board. And does that mean everybody goes on the second day? Not necessarily. It's just practical considerations for some folks. But in any case, we have Rosh Hashanah. And then on the fourth lesson, we're going to take a similar deep dive into Yom Kippur. Where does it come from? Again, it's not called Yom Kippur in the Torah. It's called something similar but slightly different. How have the customs of fasting evolved over time? I'll also give you some of my practical tips for fasting, like how I get through a fast day personally. It's not going to work for everybody. Your mileage may vary. There are two schools of thought on the caffeine question. Some people say taper off. Some people say double down, like drink a whole big pot of coffee, like right before Yom Kippur starts. I happen to be in that camp. No surprises here. And you know why I do that. So I'll give my own practical tips for fasting, and also tell you when you should not fast on Yom Kippur. There's certain circumstances under which you're not only like excused, you're forbidden from fasting on Yom Kippur, and it's important that people know the safety around that, especially if you're doing it for the first time and you haven't practiced for years or something like that. So this is what we're going to be up to in the Jew Curious School. But we're also going to do something special that I haven't done before. I'm going to take this class from the Jew Curious School that all members will have access to, along with all the other classes that we've done. But I'm going to take this one class, and I'm going to offer it outside the school. So for people who, for whatever reason, maybe being a part of a whole big school isn't for them, maybe the social aspect isn't for them, they're shy, they're introverts, that's cool. I'm one too. You wouldn't know it. Just a lot of practice coming out of my shell. But for people who just want to take a one-off class without being a part of a whole school, I'm going to offer this class as a standalone class, and you'll be hearing more about that in the near future. So just a lot of stuff that I'm super excited about. I've been working on it all weekend. My eyes are a little bit droopy and a little bit hungry from yesterday. But so we've got the Jewish Fall Holiday Challenge coming up. I put a link to that up in the chat. It's just real simple. It's just go to rabbijohncarrier.com/fall, F-A-L-L. And there's a link to that right below this video if you're here with us on Twitch. So check that out. If you sign up for that, in your email box, auto-magically, every day for 31 days, you get a link. I'm not going to send you the whole video because that would just clog up your pipes in your box and all that stuff. But I'll send you a link to the video, a new video every day for 31 days. And if you're worried about getting a video on Shabbos, just know that this stuff is sort of fully automated. It's like turning on the crock pot before Shabbat to have some cholent as a warm meal in the afternoon on Saturday. It's all fully automated, so I'm not doing any of the work on Shabbat or holidays. And if you don't like electronics on Shabbat, you don't have to watch it then. You can watch it like that night after the sun goes down. So it's fully kosher for it's like kosher for Passover. It's kosher for the high holidays, and it's Shomer Shabbos. So feel free to join that challenge. If you do, before the 9th of September, and I had to sort of set a deadline in there to give some people a goal to work toward. It's about a month from now. On our Jew Curious show broadcast on Monday morning, September the 9th, live, I'm going to do a drawing among all the people who've signed up for the challenge, and I'm giving away 3 sets. So there are going to be 3 different winners of all the people who sign up, 3 different sets for a Jewish starter library, right? And so there are some people, and some people already have this. Some people won this last year, and over the course of the year, people have been asking me, what books should I be reading? If I'm interested in Judaism, I'm just getting started. I don't have any Jewish books at all, except maybe, the Bible or something like that. Or some Philip Roth novels, highly recommended. What book should I start with? So I thought about this, and I thought, okay, if there are just some books that I would put on your shelf right away to start dipping your toes into, although don't put your toes in your books. That's unsanitary, people, especially the Bible. Don't put your toes in the Bible. But I thought, okay, if there were 6 books that people were starting out with, I don't know if I can remember them all off the top of my head. Certainly, there's my favorite edition of the Tanakh. That's the Hebrew Bible in both Hebrew and in English. It's the JPS. JPS Jewish Publication Society translation, circa 1985, I think, is my personal favorite translation, and it's in kind of a sturdy bound student Bible edition, so you can carry it around with you everywhere. So there's the Tanakh, of course. There is a cookbook. It's a Jewish holiday. It's like the Jewish holiday cookbook, but it has like challah and all sorts of standard recipes in there. There is Rabbi Irving Greenberg's The Jewish Way, which is a fantastic book taking a deep dive into all the Jewish holidays from like a philosophical and historical point of view. There is Rabbi Donan's To Pray as a Jew. That's one of my favorite introductory books, but still very thorough on Jewish prayer, and some other books like that. So if you join the challenge before September 9th, you're in the mix for a giveaway, and I'm going to draw 3 names live on this broadcast, and I guess that's approximately 4 weeks from now, to win one of 3 sets of like a 6-volume starter Jewish library. So, we've got a nice props there from K. Dixie. If you'd like to help support this informative podcast, consider becoming a subscriber. Only $4.99 a month. And what do you get for that? So I want to make sure you're getting something out of that. So we get about, if you subscribe, this community gets about half that money. So that goes right into the kitty to get a new microphone and preamp for us. Hey, Triggers and Viv says, duty calls, 10 Hut. Good to have you here, Trigger, this morning. So if you subscribe, we get some of that money to invest in equipment and bandwidth and things like that. The rest of it goes to Twitch. But then what Twitch does is it shuts off advertising for this channel. Meaning, if you're just watching this channel and you're not a subscriber, when you come on these videos, you might see a pre-roll ad where you have to just watch a video game ad or something, because Twitch is all about gaming. You might watch an ad for a video game or psoriasis medicine. My wife and I joke about that all the time, because whenever we're watching Hulu, it seems like 80% of the advertisements on Hulu are for medication for psoriasis, and I'm not making fun. I don't envy people who suffer the heartbreak of psoriasis, but that seems to be dominating the Hulu advertisements. In any case, if you don't like watching ads before these videos, if you're a subscriber, you just skip that gate. You just go right into the videos. So we see CB WeHo 2019. I have a bits and I want to give you now. Can you walk me how to do it, please? So if you have bits, let's see. I never bit myself, so I don't know exactly how to do that. Just look maybe up at the top of the chat. There might be is there like a little drop down or something? Hey, Radio Angel is here. So if somebody can tell CB WeHo 2019 how to give bits, I think it's a little button you click up at the top. So maybe I'll go grab my other computer to see how to do that. I'm going to BRB. K. Dixie says, Rabbi, I thought watching Hulu caused psoriasis. It's quite possible. Let's see, maybe that's why they're in a racket with the psoriasis medicine people. Let's see how many people have signed up for this giveaway so far. We got 10 people have entered already. That's fantastic. Wow, so we've already got 10 people. It's already getting exciting. There's only 3 winners, and we already have 10 people signed up. So that's pretty dope already. So Radio Angel says there's a diamond next to the chat box that lets you give bits. So if you're, where is that? Let's see, cheer now. Yeah, if up in the corner you can get bits, and then you can, I guess you can give bits to cheer us on. So I'm going to look up in the chat to see if I missed any questions while I was yammering on about the Jew Curious School and the cool stuff we're doing. Somebody says, little Crypex, I don't know if I've seen you here before, says, you also Jewish? I don't know if he's asking me. The answer is yes. So be kind of awkward if I were to, I mean, I am Jew curious, and I didn't know a Jewish person could be Jew curious until Joey Weissenberg illuminated that for me, that he says he's Jew curious too. So let's see. I'm not seeing any questions. If I've missed your question, and you have a question about Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Sukkot or anything at all, feel free to throw that into the chat. Put a couple of question marks in there. Makes it easier for me to see. Let's see. Let's see. Nawa64 joined the Jew Curious School. Yeah, I saw that come in last night. I can't tell you how excited I was. Nawa64 says, Torah study question, does it show up on my calendar in my time zone, or is it all PST? And Speaker AJ says it looks like it shows up. I think it shows up in your time zone. So I'll quote stuff in my time zone all the time, because that's where my brain is at. And your mileage may vary, but I think once you're a member and you the settings, there's some sort of location settings in your membership that you can set for your time zone, and then all the different things should show up in your own time zone in the calendar. So, all right, what else is going on? First day of school. Took the kids to school this morning. That was pretty exciting for me. They're in their classrooms now. KG Wilcox says, Mo Smith asks, where do people go when they die? And my question is, why do people keep asking me this question? Because it's the hardest question that there is. And the reason it's a hard question, and I love talking about this. Somebody actually asked me this this past weekend at Kiddush, the sort of the Kiddush. I go back and forth between proper Hebrew and yeshivish Ashkenaz pronunciations. So at Kiddush, which is where we all get together to say blessings to God over wine and challah and stuff, and then have lunch. And then people, been in services for 3 hours, and that's when I get that's where the original AMA starts at Kiddush, the Ask Me Anything session. And there's a guy who says, so what does Judaism say about where we go, what happens to us when we die? And I'm going to preface this with a teaching of my rabbi, Rabbi Cheryl Peretz, who said, almost no good or true answer ever started with Judaism says ... because Judaism has been talking about the most important things to humanity for about 4,000 years now, which means we've said lots of different things about just about everything. And there have been different views of the afterlife, the career of the soul, if you will, the metaphysics beyond what we can see and perceive and experience in this world. There have been different speculations over the generations. And I'll give you kind of a thumbnail sketch of it now. I think I did a whole live video on YouTube about this maybe a month or two back, so you could check that out. But so at different times in our scripture, there have been different perspectives on this. If you read in Genesis or in Sefer Breshit, you hear a lot of references to a place called Sheol. And Sheol is very akin to like a Greek idea of the underworld, right? When you talk about Hades as the king of the underworld in Greek mythology, this was what people imagine. There has been a pretty steady stream of the notion of the immortality of the soul. Like, why would God create something that was wasted, right? We have our bodies, which are made out of material, but we also perceive the existence of a soul, which is made out of the stuff of heaven, and so it must endure. And so the question is, when your body is no longer useful, what happens to your soul? And a very early Jewish idea is talked about in Breshit is that people are gathered unto their kin. is some of the translation. They go down into their, or they go down into Sheol. Jacob refers to this, oh, if I lose Benjamin, I'll go down into Sheol. Or the sons say about him, like, we've already lost Joseph, like you misplaced him accidentally. I saw what you did there, brothers. So if Benjamin is lost too, then Jacob's head will go down into Sheol, meaning a reference to death. And it's this notion, it's clearly subterranean. You go down to get there. It's not like a bad, fiery place. It's just a very dull place, where people no longer experience life, and yet your eternal soul sort of joins in with the other eternal souls of people who have passed. And so it's talked about as being gathered unto the ancestors. Jacob will meet Abraham again, for example. And so that's sort of one guidepost in this. When we get to the prophets, like Isaiah and others, start talking about this notion of Techiyat HaMetim, or the revival of the dead. There's a little scene like that in Ezekiel as well, where bones kind of snap back into place and get covered with sinews and skin, and then they sing out to God, and that's like this sort of bodily revival of the dead. We get into this notion of an olam haba, right, of the world to come. And so we go from Sheol to this world to come, meaning once we pass, we're sort of, let's say, insensate. We're not experiencing the living world. But then our bodies and our senses are revived in the world to come. And for some people, this signifies a sort of heaven, a different place that you go to immediately. Some people say this is only experienced after the advent of the Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, then we'll usher in an era of peace. The dead will be revived, and everybody will be having a good time and hanging out in the world to come. In the time of the Talmud, we also begin to see mention of a kind of purgatory, or a Gehinom, as they call it. And Gehinom, or Gehenna, was actually the name of a really terrible neighborhood in Jerusalem, is my understanding. It was like the city dump. It's where unclaimed dead bodies went. It's where people threw their garbage, and there would be trash fire, and people were burning trash there. So it was like a place full of like garbage fires and dead bodies, and just generally unpleasant. And so the rabbis start talking about this, and one of my favorite references to it is in Bava Metzia 58, 59, when they're talking about the fate of those who, they say, everybody who passes goes into Gehinom for a brief period of time as a kind of purgatory process, meaning if you have some sort of sins in your life that weren't accounted for, that weren't punished or something during your lifetime, those leftover sins are punished upon your death, but not eternally, as in the kind of Christian metaphysics described by Dante's Inferno and Bosch paintings and stuff like that. There's no eternal damnation. Well, there's almost no eternal damnation. In that part in Bava Metzia, it says, okay, everybody who dies goes into Gehinom, but then comes out again. And it's said that sort of the max sentence in purgatory is 12 months. But in Bava Metzia, and this might have been kind of an exaggeration or a metaphor, they're saying everybody who dies goes into Gehinom and comes out again, except for three kinds of people: adulterers, meaning somebody who messed with another dude's wife in technical language there, or anybody who violated somebody else's relationship, somebody who called his friend by a bad nickname, and somebody who embarrassed someone with their speech, meaning, said something that embarrassed somebody. And so that's a pretty tall order. Just for like embarrassing somebody, you have eternal damnation, when Judaism by and large doesn't do that. So just to recap, we've got the kingdom of the dead, we've got Sheol, we've got Olam Haba, which is this era of peace and revival of the dead. And in the interim, there's a sense of a kind of purgatory that happens. And this was necessitated by our firm belief, not only in the eternality of the soul, but also an overwhelming sense of justice, and a sense that God is just. and it talks about this in Masechet Brachot in like 5b, I want to say 5a, 5b, where it deals with this question of why do good people suffer and why do wicked people prosper? And it's, there's a notion that, purgatory aside, everybody has a share in the world to come. The way it's talked about is it's talked about sort of a share, like everybody has an inheritance or a lot or something that's due them in the world to come. And those who were, let's say those people who prosper in this world more than they deserve by their general behavior have a smaller share in the world to come, according to this Talmudic view. Those who suffer more than they deserve have a greater share in the world to come. And this particular argument in Masechet Brachot, page 5, says, like, there are those who God wants to reward, and so allows them to suffer more than they are due in this world so that God can give them a greater share in the world to come. And some people find that very satisfying, especially if they've experienced that kind of suffering that defies understanding. Some people find that very problematic. Some people say, like, I would rather not suffer in this world because I don't know what's in the next world. And even you flip the page, and on the very next page, the rabbis are arguing with that idea. And some, are in states of extreme suffering. They're like, look, you can keep the world to come. I'd rather not suffer in this world. And so one of the hardest questions to answer in Judaism in 30 seconds or less, and boy, I've blown it certainly, is what happens after we die, because there are different points of view throughout history in Jewish literature, in the Torah, in the Talmud, in the Mishnah, in modern reflections on it. And Jews today are diverse in that opinion. What by and large, not completely, but by and large, we're not trying to give you a simple answer to that question, whereas other religions feel really cool with giving you a very precise answer to that question. In fact, the integrity of those religions hinge on belief in a very particular, well-defined afterlife, career of the soul, etc. And in my mind, the hardest question, like every religion has to answer two questions for people. One is, why is the world unjust? Meaning, why do good people suffer and bad people prosper? And what happens after we die? These are the two hardest questions to answer. And most religions make an attempt at those, and people adhere to those religions based on their satisfaction with those answers. What I love about Judaism is that it doesn't pretend to give me pat answers to either of those questions, but it does give me a view into that debate over the course of 4,000 years, and the invitation to engage in that debate myself, right? So if you're coming from a place where if you don't believe in exactly this geographic, geologic, metaphysical description of hell, then you don't belong to this community. So I left that. I was never comfortable with that. But then I get into a place that doesn't pretend to give me an easy answer, but says, here are some different ideas that we've had. What do you think? And why does it matter so much to you? Right? That's the big question. Like, why do you care? Because once you answer that authentically, then you can really have a good conversation about, okay, I care because I perceive that the world is unjust and I want to do something about it, right? Or do we just let all of these people who are suffering suffer because they get a greater eternal reward and we're satisfied with that? Or do we have a responsibility to help people suffer unjustly less in this world? And I find openness toward that idea much more satisfying than a pat answer on exactly where my soul's going after I die. So that's starting to get a little soapboxy on that, but that's my take. So KG Wilcox threw some bits at us. Thank you so much. So if you now that you figured out how to throw bits, tell the others because a couple of people have asked so far. So Rabbi, I left that for Speaker AJ says, Rabbi, I left that for the same reason. I left when I was 7, and then there was about 22-year gap between that and me starting my conversion path. So thanks for sharing that with us. I mean, I think that's something I've heard a lot from people. It's like, okay, the answers that I was given weren't satisfying, or rather it's like, okay, if you don't like this answer, it's sort of my way or the highway. Like, if you don't believe this thing, you can't be a part of this club. And Judaism almost entirely eschews a necessary commitment of belief. Right, belief in God for me. I'll just speak personally. Is like belief in gravity. Like gravity exists whether I believe in it or not, and gravity is going to have its way, regardless of my opinions about gravity. Right, I'm still gonna, be heavy on the scale and fall down the stairs and all that stuff. God forbid. But I still, whether I believe in gravity or not, I still live in a universe that gravity has some say in. So, but it doesn't require me to believe any particular thing. When I converted to Judaism, I was an atheist and felt pretty good about that. It's only after years of study and engaging with people and having some life experiences of my own that I was then opened up to a notion of faith and a notion of a personal relationship with God. That was hard won, and I can't tell anybody that you have to believe how I believe. One of my favorite rabbinic quotes, I think it was Mickey Rosen, Alav Shalom, the teacher of one of my teachers, who said, you don't have to believe what I believe. I just want you to sing with me. This is what he said to people when he was leading services at his synagogue, which I believe was Yakar in the German colony in Jerusalem. When we come together for services, I don't expect anybody there to believe exactly the way I believe. I just ask them, sing along, and we're going to have this moment together and talk about this stuff. And some things we'll have in common, some things we won't. But in this moment, we have each other's presence and we can hear each other's voices, and let's celebrate that. So, KG Wilcox says, so we got some, CB WeHo 2019 accomplished the bits, threw us up 1,000 bits. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. That's about that's a scooch farther toward getting a better microphone situation. KG Wilcox says, I see God as in charge of physics, which is great, but not in control of much else. That's kind of a deistic view, if I remember my vocabulary. Let's see. Speaker AJ says, I love that belief. For me, it totally depends upon the day how I perceive God. That's true for me as well. But that's one of the ways I come back to in sometimes. That was a debate engendered by Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan in his discussions initiating the Reconstructing Judaism movement. Was he was trying to help people connect with Judaism who didn't believe in a kind of personal anthropomorphic God, instead saw God much more and more as like a force of nature that kind of defied that personalization. And so he wanted to give people a version, people who sort of already connected with God as a force rather than as a personality. He wanted to speak to that and give people something that they could anchor who didn't connect with God as a person, but connected with God as, as physics, as quantum physics, as Newtonian physics, wherever you're coming from, God as a force of nature. And then some of his critics said, yes, I agree with that. I like this idea that we don't have to hang our hat on a God with like fingers and toes and a long white beard and, sometimes acts like Santa Claus and sometimes acts like an accountant. But as this person said, I don't know if it was my teacher, Rabbi Dorf, or somebody else said, I can't pray to a force, right? It's like sometimes when you're talking, and if I'm in agreement with Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, you should talk to God like you talk to a friend. I'm not telling you what to do. This is how I pray. You can talk to God like you talk to a friend. And it's sometimes hard to say, hey, what's up, physics? I'm a little sad today. I could really use some support. Or I have something to do in my life that seems to require more strength than I personally have. Can I borrow some of yours? Uh, Hard to do when you think of God in such abstraction. And yet, if it works for you, I'm not here to yuck your yums. I'll say it that way. Speaker AJ says, there's also an awesome way of thinking about God that Rabbi Rami Shapiro describes as panentheism, whereby everything is a manifestation of God, but that there is a force out there that we don't understand, right? The panentheism is that God sort of pervades everything, right? Everything is a manifestation of God. And this, one of my favorite descriptions along these lines comes from Rabbi Brad Artson as sort of put perhaps oversimply. I hope I don't destroy the metaphor, but it's like God is the ocean and we are the waves, right? We're all connected to this great ocean. We're all made of this ocean, and yet every once in a while we can be distinct, like waves in a vast ocean. A wave will rise up for its time, express itself, distinct from all other waves, and then recede back into the oneness of the ocean. And so that's helpful for me sometimes. Maybe not when I'm trying to have a private conversation with God. Bistachio says, for me, I try to use a personified God as a sort of metaphor for the abstraction when I need to talk to God. So I think that's handy, and I think God's big enough to handle those different interfaces, as it were. So just to get back to what we were talking about earlier, when we're talking about the afterlife and the career of the soul, like I said, there are certain religions that have a very clear, buttoned up, very well outlined metaphysic that describes the geography and geology of heaven and hell and things like that, and the exact path that the soul goes through. Judaism gives a few of those, but I also want to comp to the fact that there are certain strains within Judaism, certain Hasidic sects and schools of Kabbalah that adhere to a definite, metaphysic that say, okay, this is exactly what happens. And, a couple of those include ideas like Gilgul HaNafashot, and this is a sort of a theory of reincarnation, if you will, that souls, being eternal, once they're done with one physical form, may go into another physical form on the birth of a child or something like that. And some people feel like when somebody converts to Judaism, they sort of acquire a second soul, right? Or a holy soul on top of their sort of worldly soul, if you will. There is something that was taught to me a few years ago called kafakela, and this is a more Kabbalistic sort of mystical idea. Kafakela means the cup of a sling. Like if you've ever used a slingshot, it's got that little pocket there where you put whatever it is you're slinging, and that's the kaf. That's the vessel that holds the vessel of the sling. And so, according to this, and I listened to, somebody told me about it, I found a lecture online that explained it, that if you, when a person passes, it's a similar idea to this sort of purgative process. There are souls whose bodies pass before they're done doing all the mitzvahs that they need to do, or before they've made up for, any transgressions that they left unatoned. And what happens is the soul is placed in this slingshot and then released, but instead of going through space, the soul takes this sort of rapid journey through time. And the soul then observes sort of the entire history of that person's life. So it's the sort of the life flashing before your eyes thing. The soul reviews all of the person's deeds over the entire course of their life and is sort of made to see, this is where I let somebody down. This is where I let myself down. This is where I could have done something better. This is a missed opportunity, and look at the consequences I didn't perceive at the time. And so this purgatory is the soul reviewing its life, and just in that, that is enough to purge, whatever leftover schmutz is on the soul, and then it's ready for Olam Haba. And again, it takes approximately, depending on the nature of your soul, it could take about 12 months or so, or 12 months max, let's say. See, Nawa 64 Rabbi CB WeHo 2019 of the 1000-bit cheer had a question about Talit Katan. Let me see if I could find that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. Sometimes the chat goes so fast they can't catch all of these things. Looking for... question of, thanks for bringing that to my attention. Looking for Talit Katan. As a conservative Jew, should I wear a Talit Katan? So that's, I'll say that's, well, for anybody, that's a personal choice. If you're not a conservative Jew, it's more of a communal choice. There's more pressure there. There are conservative Jews who do, and there's a lot of conservative Jews who don't. Talit Katan, for people who aren't familiar with this, is and maybe I'll go get one. I don't want to pull mine out on air. I've done that before, and I realized how immodest that was. But it's a Talit Katan. It means small talit. So a talit is the prayer shawl that we wear. I got one up there. I'm not going to dig it out. A talit is the prayer shawl that people wear that have fringes on the corners of them. The entire purpose of which is like a fringe delivery system, if you will. It says it says in blanking Bamidbar, I believe, where it talks about how we're instructed to have the fringes on the corners of our garment, so that when we look at the fringes on the corner of our garment, that means like the tzitzit, we look upon those and we're reminded of all the mitzvot. And the problem is that rule was made when people wore square clothing, like when people wore togas and stuff like that. So everybody had a garment that had four corners on it, and they would bind the tzitzit to those corners. Nowadays, we wear mostly round clothes, right? My shirt is constructed in such a way that it buttons and it fits the shape of my body instead of a shawl that I wrap around myself. And so for prayer services, we might wear what's called a talit or a talit gadol, like a big tallis, so that we can have the fringes on us on a four-cornered garment when we say the Shema and recite that passage about the tzitzit. However, there are those who wear a talit at all times, and a more convenient way of doing this is a talit katan. And so this is a talit that's worn under somebody's shirt. And more often, it doesn't look like a shawl that wraps. It's more like a poncho. It's like a four-cornered garment with a hole for your head, and you put it on, and it's got the fringes. And so if you've been around Chabad rabbis or in neighborhoods with lots of Hasidic Jews, you see people with those fringes hanging out of their shirts or hanging out of their pants or something like that. That's because they're wearing a talit underneath their clothes. And so that way they can fulfill this mitzvah throughout the day. And many people wear those with the fringes untucked. Some people wear them with the fringes tucked in. And there's a teaching that if you are in a place where it's not common for these to be worn, and you might actually be singled out and it might be physically risky for you, it's okay to tuck them in. The other condition in which it's okay to tuck them in is out of modesty. And it's, if some people perceive that wearing these things are sort of an outward, ostentatious display of piety. Now, that's not a judgment I'm going to put on anybody else. However, I've worn a talit katan, I'll say most days for the last 10, 11 years. And, when I don't wear it at the gym, and I don't wear it when I'm swimming or things like that, or if I'm just like wearing shorts and a t-shirt out playing Frisbee or whatever. I never play Frisbee. What am I saying? If I'm out someplace where it's my tzitzit are going to get schmutzed up, I don't wear it. But most days, especially when I'm working, I wear this talit under my shirt, and never been anything but a conservative Jew personally. So you can. It's probably, I'll say, just statistically less common in conservative circles and in reform circles, but it's not unheard of. And you can get some, though. I wear a certain kind that's made out of like this breathable mesh fabric. It's like that the stuff they used to make what we call pennies back in football practice. Those things that you could wear over your jersey for scrimmage. It's like this really breathable fabric, so that it doesn't get super duper hot when you're wearing 3 layers of clothing. So As a conservative Jew, long story short, yes, you can wear talit katan, and if you want to hit me up later, maybe I can email you some sources. There are different kinds that you'll see out there. Some are I wear this, like I said, this sort of polyester mesh kind, which is very breathable. Um, some people wear scratchy wool ones because that's their religious practice. In some places they wear them under the clothes. In some places they wear them maybe over their clothes so that everybody can see you're wearing one, but you might have your coat on over it, for example. So different practices. Let's see. KG Wilcox shares A Judaica. There's the link here, Talit Katan kosher with tzitzit. So there are different places you could buy those. And KG Wilcox says also they're tucked in cemeteries because the dead can't do mitzvot. So I hadn't heard that particular teaching about it, but there's a different teaching that I studied that says if you're walking in a cemetery, don't let your tzitzit touch the ground. And some people say it's because they want to contract tumah from the dead bodies, less of an issue now. But there's another rabbi said no, you don't want to sort of flaunt your tzitzit around the dead because it makes them jealous that they can't do mitzvot, which kind of goes back to our afterlife discussion before. And my friend and colleague Rabbi Ron Goldberg was fascinated with this question. I think he did like his thesis on this. What do the dead know? And there are many discussions in the Talmud where it's like the dead know what's going on in our world and perceive it. And sometimes when we, let's say, drag our tzitzit on the ground or wear them out at cemeteries, that makes the dead uncomfortable because they no longer have physical bodies to do mitzvot with. KG Wilcox asks, let's see. I think I got the question about the Talit Katan. If I didn't, feel free. If I had any other leftover questions about Talit Katan, let me know. Let's see. KG Wilcox says, is there a teaching anywhere that one job we have is to become a vessel for blessing? So we have to empty ourselves to make room for God's blessing. So there is a notion that there's a discussion in Breshit, in Genesis, that God says to Abraham, not only will I bless you, but I will make you a conduit for blessing. Like other people will bless themselves by you. And we should live our life not just to receive blessing and to bless others, but to be a blessing for other people. I'm less keen on the idea that means we have to empty ourselves to become sort of pure vessels. That's not really. I'll say that's less of a Jewish idea, although there may be some sort of Pentecostal, small p Pentecostal strains of Judaism that see we have to completely, the abnegation of the self. We don't have those kind of monastic traditions where we erase our own identity in order to be pure vessels for God in the world. I think God actually likes us and made us the way we are because that gives God joy. And so to erase the self for some other standard, first of all, you better be pretty sure that path that you're choosing is actually what God wants. And that can, I tend to think that God made us the way God made us because God wanted us to be that way. And what if that's the purest expression of what we can do in the world? Because that's uniquely what we are capable of doing. If everyone emptied themselves and only sort of picked one spiritual path to portray into the world, that would erase the vast creativity and diversity of human beings that God put into the world to do different things. Like at one point I just embraced that one thing I really enjoy doing and have had some success doing and have helped other people by doing is teaching, right? And if I set that aside so that I could do other mitzvot that other people thought were more important for me, I would, the world would lose that, or I would lose that. And then I maybe even be rejecting the gift that God gave me in the first place. And so I would put a little bit of a twist on that and say, it's not the abnegation of success, of self that God wants. God doesn't want us to empty erase our ego, erase our own uniqueness in order to all adhere to one path. What I prefer to do myself and encourage other people to do is, okay, figure out what makes you special and figure out how that can become a blessing, right? So instead of everybody being a blessing in the same way, I try to be a blessing by teaching about Judaism, by teaching about, because that's just what I've spent the most time studying. I could teach math, I could teach economics. There's all sorts of other things. I could teach how to set up a Twitch channel, but the thing that I never get tired of teaching is about Judaism. And so I'm going to take that thing that God gives me pleasure in doing and has been helpful for some people, and I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it in a way that it's a blessing. I'm going to teach other people how to kind of harvest the gifts in their life the way I've harvested the gifts in my life. And so I'm going to take my uniqueness and make that a blessing, and would encourage other people to do the same. If you are good at knitting quilts, actually knitting and quilts are two different things. If you're good at knitting, you could knit a hat that Miley Cyrus really likes, and that might make you a millionaire or something like that. Or you could knit, caps for people in homeless shelters. Or maybe you could knit for Miley Cyrus if you're really good at celebrity headgear, and then give that money to help people in homeless shelters. So that's the path that I think I would take, because this goes back to our discussion of the afterlife earlier. When we discuss whether it's the afterlife or discuss mystical practices and things like that, I always like to throw out, I got this from Rabbi Adam Greenwald, didn't invent this myself. It was actually in the Mishnah, and he taught me this Mishnah. In Mishnah Chagiga, it's sort of a Masechet about the holidays, but lots of tangents in the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Chagiga says there are four things that it's better that one had never been born than to dwell on these four things, right? And that's a tall order. That's like Jimmy Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life type stuff. It's better that you should never have been born than to spend excessive amount of time worrying about four things. And that is, what is above, what is below, what is before, and what is after. And these are sort of general terms for what we think of as metaphysics, and a lot of the subject of Kabbalah, especially because it's things like, above and below, what's heaven like? What's hell like? What happens to good people? What happens to bad people? After, what's before is before the universe was created. What was there? And there wasn't, we don't have that same kind of creation ex nihilo that they talk about in, say, Catholic circles. If you take a close look at Genesis, there was a there before God created this instantiation of the universe. There was a tohu vavohu. It was formless, and like the translation formless and void is sort of a modern kind of Christianized translation. And tohu vavohu just meant it was kind of a turmoil of waters, this sort of chaos, just matter without order. And the first thing God said was, let there be light. And then what was already it never said God created water. It said God illuminated the water and then separated the water, right? So there was a before. But what the Mishnah is saying is, look, dude, look, y'all, not to be too gendered there. Look, y'all, we have enough to do in this world to worry too much about the next world, or the before world, or the above world, or the below world. The Torah gives us 613 commandments to do. Some of those we can't do anymore because we don't have the temple. Some of them we can't do if we're not farmers in Israel, for example. But there's still a pretty long list, right? And so that is enough to occupy all of one's time. Like if you get all of those mitzvahs done, and you've got a couple hours to spare, then you can speculate on the afterlife. But we have enough to do in this world to take care of ourselves, to learn Torah, to pray, to serve other people, to get jobs, build businesses, raise families, take care of our parents, take care of our children. There is enough to do in this world that we don't need to spend an excessive amount of time worrying about the next world or the other world. And the rabbis said this on a practical level. Like, we've seen guys who dwelled on the metaphysics that were distracted, and it took them out of this world. And that's not how we should live our lives, right? God didn't give us commandments to ignore. Maybe I'm not good at all of them yet. I'm still working on it. But it's plenty to occupy my attention without worrying excessively about what's in the next world. And if you think that that's ignoring ultimate truths, take a look at that teaching we had earlier about... take a look at that teaching we had earlier that somebody shared, like, don't wear your tzitzit out in a graveyard. Why? Because the dead, insofar as they're aware of human activity, are jealous. They'd rather be doing mitzvot. Right? So if you're worried about, oh, what's it going to be like when I'm dead? And if you ask a dead person, apparently they're going to say, ugh, I wish I was still alive doing mitzvot. Right? The afterlife isn't something that we long for. I was sharing this teaching that I got from Rabbis Without Borders. We're sort of a roundtable discussion in like theology and politics and neuroscience, where this one expert just dropped this bomb that I don't think it like disturbed anybody. It really disturbed me. It was talking about the idea that Pentecostalism is the ideal mode of religion for a post-capitalist society. And what he meant by that, not that I'm knocking capitalism, but he meant like, any society that's in turmoil, where people have sort of lost hope in their ability to change the world around them, are attracted to religious paths that dwell on otherworldliness, right? Fatalism, saying, well, I'm totally out of control. I'm a slave. I'm oppressed. I can't affect this world. So I'm going to stop thinking about this world. I'm just going to, this world is an illusion. I can't do anything about it. I'm just going to pray for heaven, right? I'm going to long for that day when I'm in paradise. And that is the theology of a people who have given up on this world. And I don't mean to be mean about it. I don't want to yuck other people's yums, as I say. But if you are dwelling on the afterlife, if you're dwelling on, the unseen behavior of angels, I'd like to suggest you don't give up on this world yet, because there's plenty of work left for us to do. And even if you feel powerless, there's something you could be doing right now that could help another person, even if it's just a smile, even if it's just being kind to somebody, right? Work on improving your relationships in this world. Work on extending kindness and mercy and compassion and justice in this world, because if there's a heaven and if there's an accounting, it's going to be based on how we lived in this world. So, sermon over. Sorry about that. I'm just going to get back into the chat because I see some great questions here. Is anyone else experiencing interruptions in the connection? Sorry about that, K. Dixie. Pistachio says, I'm curious, what do you think of Robert Alter's translation of the Tanakh? I know it's not really a religious translation, but I personally enjoyed it. I had to read Alter's Torah for a class, and it's what got me into Judaism in the first place. I'm going to confess, I haven't read Alter's translation yet. That's a bit of my own ignorance. Since I've been studying Torah, it started out before I knew any Hebrew at all. I was given a JPS 85 translation of the Tanakh, and that's what I've been teaching out of since. But I know the Alter thing's been out for a couple of years now, and I haven't taken a look at it yet. Just because I think the I'm not saying either one is better. I just think the JPS translation is very, very good. And so I haven't had the need to go to another translation yet, but I should probably take a look at that just to broaden my cultural horizons. KG Wilcox, my personal opinion, no belt tzitzis. Some messianics do that, and it isn't the corner of a garment. So people are talking about you can wear tzitzit on a belt. That's a little bit like wearing a cap with payas hanging out of it. Like it's like the cap with sideburns, or the costume hats with dreads sewn into them. Let's see. Mo Smith says giving your prayer shawl washed in a loved one's coffin is okay. I'm not sure if I fully understand that. I think KG Wilcox is copying and pasting things from YouTube into here, and that's fine. I'll say we multicast this. I've just found that Twitch is the best platform for putting a video together. It's much less laggy than YouTube, for example. So I made the decision to only broadcast on Twitch, but then to multicast it to YouTube and Facebook. And I put this in the comments. If anybody's watching on Facebook or YouTube, I love you. I'm really grateful that you're here. And I can only follow one chat at a time. So if you've been putting questions or comments in YouTube, at the end of this broadcast, I'll go back to YouTube and get into the comment section there and answer whatever questions I can. Same for Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, God bless you. Thank you for being here. And I'll come back at the end to look at things there. I hope that's all right. Until I can invest in a multi-screen setup here in my dining room / library. Let's see. Pistachio says, yay, valid, and I really enjoyed Alter. So I'm going to have to check that out, the Alter translations. Nawas64 says, got to ramp up the donations, cheers, and bits for better equipment. Yeah, so what I found was one thing that I have invested in is I have an arrangement with one of my children to borrow her laptop, because the PC streaming software works better than the Mac streaming software. I'm a Mac person. I get no money from the Mac people for this, but so I have to borrow my child's laptop to stream, and in order to, the arrangement is, and I wanted to make it a fair arrangement, is I then give her. I don't give her money to rent the equipment. I buy her currency in her favorite online video game that she likes to play. So I'm renting it for bits, essentially. So every couple of weeks, I top off her account so that I can rent a good PC for this broadcast. So those are the technicalities. And look, I'm here to teach Judaism. If anybody ever wants to know about how to set up a Twitch channel, or how to start a YouTube channel or something like that, hit me up. This is something I've spent an inordinate amount of time on that I'm happy to help people out, just whatever I've learned. So listen, everybody, thank you for being here today. Just for station identification, which I haven't really done yet. This is the Jew Curious Show. This is something that started off as an audio podcast about a year ago. Have, some aspiration to get back into that. I have some interviews recorded that I really want to put out that I haven't put out yet. But over time, we've added video components and streaming and things like that. So now we mostly do live streaming twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. It's been at 9. I think I might shift that to 9:30 now that school's in session. But Monday and Friday morning Pacific time. Mondays is just kind of an Ask Me Anything question. We've had some great questions today about the afterlife and Talit Katan and God and all sorts of great stuff. Not so much about the holidays, but if people have questions about the holidays, maybe that'll ramp up. I've been watching Google Trends, and I watch like the frequency of people searching for certain things. And there's always like a spike every year for Rosh Hashanah, because nobody wants to know about Rosh Hashanah around Passover. But, you get into August and September, the search trends go up for Rosh Hashanah. So want to take advantage of that just to help teach people. Let's see. Noah 64 says, so just to wrap up, this is a show for anybody who's Jew curious. That means you could be Jewish, not Jewish yet, not planning on it, but just curious about Judaism. If you have questions about Judaism, I'm here to answer those questions for you as best I can. And we also have a great community of people who answer each other's questions and just support each other, give high fives from time to time. And then we may jump into some deeper learning, like the Jew Curious School, for example. So everybody's welcome here, regardless of your background, as long as you're respectful of the other people in the chat. Whatever question you have, there's no rude question. There's no dumb question. There's no question that's going to embarrass me, because I've probably had it myself over the last few decades. So feel free to jump in. Radio Angel says you can also simultaneously live stream and podcast with Anchor app. Interesting. Let's see. Somebody had a question about the Temple Mount. I've saw that there is news. I haven't been following the news about the Temple Mount, because I don't know that God necessarily wants us fighting over rocks and real estate. So that's kind of a glib answer to something that people take very seriously. Yes, there's been some a dust up about the Temple Mount, especially when we've been just come out of the holy day of Tisha B'Av, which among other things commemorates the siege of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. And people often ask me, is the temple coming back? Is that a good thing? Is that something that we're praying for? Because there's a lot of prayer in Jewish liturgy about the temple and about how sad we are that we lost it and that we can no longer do animal sacrifices. I'm going to share, I personally don't miss it that much. And I do pray a traditional liturgy. Yes, there was a tragedy whereby we were no longer able to connect with God in the way that we were accustomed to connecting with God. I would say the human cost of that tragedy is actually much greater. When reading through the Book of Lamentations, Megillat Echa, that we did the other night, going through all the things around the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple, it's not the temple that I was sad for. It was the human cost. It was horrible scenes of starvations and depredation and violence and sexual violence and all these horrible things that were happening to people in that siege. I think I'm just going to put my chips on the table here. I think the human cost of siege, over the ownership of a piece of real estate, is more tragic to me than, let's say, not having the temple there anymore. Because once we lost the temple, we also gained a new way of connecting to God, right? Once we didn't have the temple anymore, we invented prayer service. We invented Torah study as an activity that I think gives us probably more insight into the mind of God than, showing up and killing animals in a place on a regular basis. That's just me. So I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other about whether the temple's coming back or whether it should. I'll just say I'm doing okay without it. And if people feel like killing each other over this, then I discourage that. I discourage that activity. Is Israel a good thing? Yes. Do Jews belong in Jerusalem? Yes. Exclusively? No. But I think we can have a self-governing state that we can defend without blaming God for our willingness to hurt each other in places like that. And that goes for all sides in that conflict. Let's see, somebody says, what's your opinion on blowing up the Dome of the Rock? Should we fulfill this mitzvah about removing all high places? Yeah, I find that notion disgusting. I'll say it's there is a mitzvah about removing high places, about idolatry in our own midst. I think if you're making military activities based on if you're making military or political decisions based on apocalyptic theology, the world doesn't work that way anymore. May there someday be a Jewish presence or even exclusively Jewish presence on that mount? Yes. Does that make us responsible for dynamiting what's there right now? It does not, and I don't consider that a mitzvah. I consider that inciting war and inviting murder. So I don't think it's a mitzvah to blow up the Dome of the Rock. If circumstances occur that over the next 1,000 years something happens, I don't know. But yeah, I think there's enough craziness and extremism going around without blowing up other people's houses of worship. Yeah, and I can be just as Jewish here in Los Angeles without killing other people for my faith on the other side of the world. So that's about as deep as I'll dig into that. Yeah, I'm not into blowing things up personally. So that's unless it's blowing up views, unless it's going viral. I don't know. Even viral sounds gross. It sounds like you're sick or something. So blowing up teaching, expanding our consciousness, but not expanding matter in order to hurt people because of your particular opinion. So I think the world could do with less of that. So yeah, just get a little serious. Got a little current events here, but that's okay. I think I keep going back to Isaiah, and this is again, we're going to get into the high holidays pretty soon, and I always love to reflect on the passage from Yeshayahu or Isaiah that's the Haftarah for Yom Kippur. God says that, is this the fast that I require? The notion that, Isaiah saw people in Jerusalem punctiliously, meticulously fasting on holidays and doing all the right sacrifices and things like that, but leaving their employees without pay or letting people starve the rest of the year. And God was saying through Isaiah, if you're going to make decisions to hurt people based on your religious views, that's not what the religion is for. It's for helping people. It's for ensuring that the hungry are fed. It's ensuring that systems of justice are in fact just, and ensuring that compassion can be shared with those who are suffering. So that's I think that's more in line with the theology that I get the most value of, and so share along with that. So if anybody feels like getting into YouTube and being like, oh, we got to kill all of this person's or kill all of that person's and it's a mitzvah, as one of my teachers would say, that's not teaching Torah, that's burning it. So I'm not going to go there. So with that, let me just say it's been really great to learn with people today. I really appreciate the. We're not gonna end necessarily. If people have some more questions, feel free to throw those into the chat. We've got some KG Wilcox and CB WeHo have donated bits today, going toward our microphone or preamp fund. And if you're just joining us, this is the Jew Curious Show. We're here to answer questions and entertain people, I guess, but entertain questions and conversations that people have about Judaism and Jewish practice. We got some holidays coming up. Yeah, okay. So KG, I'm going to ask you to stop porting that stuff over, if I may, just because I'll deal with that on YouTube later. I don't need it in this chat. So, yeah. Nawa64 says, Rabbi, how and why did Yom Teruah get changed to Rosh Hashanah? No sorries necessary. Just we're figuring it out. So how and why did Yom Teruah get changed to Rosh Hashanah? So spoiler alert, I was going to teach this in the class, in our High Holidays class, that the words Rosh Hashanah don't appear anywhere in the Torah. So when it's talked about as like Yom HaZikaron, or Yom HaTruah. And so it's your trumpet day, or Truah means like the sound or a blast of a trumpet or a shout or something like that. So it's Yom Truah. It's like the day of trumpets, or sometimes in some translations called the Feast of Trumpets. And so that's what this holiday, the first day of Tishrei, or it just doesn't say Tishrei because that's a month name that we got later. But the first day of the 7th month is Yom Truah, the day of the sounding of the trumpets. Later on in the Mishnah, in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, it's just talking about different high points of the year, and for different reasons, there are 4 different heads of the year. It says, it was one day is the head of the year for regnal years, that is the counting of a king's reign. There's a head of the year for trees. That's the 15th of the month of Shvat is according to Rabbi Hillel, is the new year of accounting for trees. And then the first of Tishrei is the new year for years. Like when we're counting the number of years since the creation of the world by a traditional counting, the first of Tishrei is this new year for years. And so all of these things, according to the Mishnah, are sort of small letters, Rosh Hashanah, like heads of the year. But what we call Rosh Hashanah is just one of those, and that's the head of the year for counting years. And so after that, it just became common parlance to use, we'll say Mishnah times, like 200 of the Common Era and so on. It became common to call this first of Tishrei Rosh Hashanah, and that's when the calendars would turn over. This year it goes from 5779 to 5780. And as I always like to joke, it usually takes me a month or two before I start writing 5780 on my checks, for example. So that's that's why we call Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah. It goes back to Mishnah times, and it's not what it's called in the Torah, for example. So that's why we call Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah, and we'll be learning more about that in our High Holidays class in the Jew Curious School, which starts that class starts today. It's going to go for the next 4 weeks, and uh, there's going to be a separate way for people who aren't in the Jew Curious School to join that. For whatever reason you're not in the school, people make their own decisions. That's cool. We have a great time, but if that's not something you're ready for yet, I want to make sure that I offer this class on the High Holy Days for everybody, so that everybody can take advantage of this. And so keep an eye out for that. If you're signed up for the Jewish Fall Holiday Challenge, for example, you'll hear a lot more because we're going to be going over all the Jewish Fall holidays. And so another benefit to being signed up for that is if you want to connect to this other High Holidays class that I'm doing, you'll be able to sign up for that as well. So let's see, just as we're getting closer to wrapping up today's discussion, I do want to go ahead and I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. Look at the other questions that are coming in on Facebook and YouTube. Let's check Facebook, see what's going on there. So bear with me. Radio Angel says, just sign up for the Fall Holiday Challenge. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, I talked about this in the beginning. Just want to let people know I did this last year, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm doing it again this year. What we had was a Fall Holiday Challenge, and I set it up. Last year I made 31 videos. That's a lot of videos. I made 31 videos about the holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and I put them in a system whereby all you have to do is sign up on the challenge page, and then automatically you will get a daily email for 31 days. And that doesn't matter. It's sort of a individual starter thing. So whenever you sign up, you start getting video number 1, video number 2, and so on. It's not like if you sign up late, you're going to miss them. Wherever you start, you'll get daily videos for 31 days. And so you'll get, we'll start off like with an overview of the holidays. We'll talk about the month of Elul and preparation. Then we'll get into, several different videos about Rosh Hashanah, several different videos about Yom Kippur, several different videos about different aspects of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah and Tashlik and all the different things that come with that. So I'm just going to see if I could find our live stream on Facebook here and answer questions while we're doing this. Let's see. So if anybody's watching on Facebook Live, this doesn't look like we have any questions on Facebook today. I think I've trained people to get into Twitch, for example, instead. And going to look kind of through my fingers at this. Let's see what's going on over in YouTube. It seems like we got some jesters over there talking about blowing stuff up. Let's see. Nope, that was last time. So I'm going to go over to YouTube and see what's going on in the chat over there. Triggers and Viv says, I will likely miss classes this afternoon. Sorry about that. Let's see. But the cool thing is the classes are all recorded. So if you miss a few, you could always go back. And you can also always participate if you're in the school. Let's see. That's good radio. Just checking my phone, looking for the chat in YouTube today. Where do people go when they die? Rabbi, did you see my question? Where do people go when they die, Rabbi? So many questions on YouTube chat. Okay, so just as a mode of trading, if you're watching this on YouTube, I mostly check the chat on Twitch, and so feel free in the future to jump into Twitch. It is no harder to sign up for Twitch than it was to sign up for YouTube. It's actually much easier, I think, and that's where I do the chat. Let's see. Baruch Hashem, my Orthodox conversion is complete, and I'm geared up to celebrate and partake in the holidays as a Jew. A dream of over 20 years in the making. Yasher koach. That's quite an achievement, and I know converting to Judaism through an Orthodox Beit Din is no easy task, and fully participating in the holidays is a machaya. It's a mitzvah. Is it me or is the audio ridiculously low? Yeah, it's on Rabbi John's ends. Feel free to turn up your speakers. Let's see. Last night after Tisha B'Av with a BDC MD says, I sat last night after Tisha B'Av with a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor who gave me a unique view on the world to come after all he faced. His memory is as sharp as a tack, and Hashem blessed me with his presence at my table so that I could pass along his words of wisdom. So that's an amazing experience. Now in the tribe. Awesome. BDCMD says, God connects and binds the universe together. He is in everything and defines who we are, gives us free choice, and there are rewards and punishments for everything that we do. We're talking more about the Tali Katan. Let's see. Mo Smith says, giving your prayer shawl washed in a loved one's coffin is okay. I'm not sure exactly what that means. If it means you take a washed prayer shawl and put it in a loved one's coffin. There's some people bury their dead with a talit. There's more Temple Mount stuff. So I'll just answer this question real quick because it's itching on me. The person who's talking about blowing up the Dome of the Rock says, so idols are okay in Jerusalem. So as far as I know, there are no idols in the Dome of the Rock. If you want to make an idol out of the Dome of the Rock, which it sounds like you're doing, then that's on you. But so yeah, if you're worshiping real estate rather than God, I think is the nature of idolatry. Let's see. Somebody was back in the chat here. Noah64 says, so can we talk about getting Jew Curious t-shirts? Yes. Cute idea. With Rabbi John's permission, can we make some online? I think whatever t-shirts you want to make online, I guess, are okay with me. Now I'm gonna do a little digging. So let's maybe instead of going in a bunch of different directions, maybe I'll take a look at it and see somebody had in some form had expressed a preference for union-made shirts and union-printed T-shirts. So I want to see if that's a reasonable possibility because I support, union labor. Where insofar as it's practical to make T-shirts, I don't know. So I want to dig into that a little bit, and then we can get some official Jew Curious merch. I guess I never thought I would say those words, but yeah, if people are out and proud about it, I'd be happy to see those T-shirts. Radio Angel K Dixie, I've tried learning about the holidays in the fall last year. Glad to have some guidance this time around. So yes, I'm going to look into making T-shirts. If you are looking for guidance on the fall holidays, the best thing to do that I can help you do, there's lots of good things out there to do. Go to synagogues, pray and stuff is important. What I'm trying to help people with is this 31-day Jewish Fall Holiday Challenge, whereby you can go to a link. I'm going to throw this link in here one more time. It's https://rabbijohncarrier.com fall. So there's the link one more time. That's the Jewish Fall Holiday Challenge. If you go there and sign up, you will automatically receive, you'll get an email right away just confirming everything, kind of letting you know the rules and procedures of the challenge itself. And then every day, starting tomorrow, you will get, or starting the day after you sign up, whenever you sign up, you will get an email in your inbox. We got 18 people signed up for it now. That's dope. We've now gone from a minion. We were at 10 a minute ago. Now we're at high. So what's the 18 is the Jewish numerology for life. But if you sign up for the challenge, automatically the day after you sign up, you'll get video number 1, and the day after that, video number 2, and you'll get videos daily for 31 days. Or rather, you'll get the links to it. I'm not going to email you a video that's going to clog up your inbox, but you'll get a link to a video every single day for 31 days. If you're Shomer Shabbos, just want to make sure you understand that these videos were all pre-made and the links were all preset, and the software that sends it daily was all automated a long time ago. So no Shabboses were broken in the making of these or delivery of these videos. And if you don't want to watch videos during Shabbat because that's your spiritual path, I support that. It'll just be waiting for you in your mailbox to take a look at afterwards. So you can sign up for that. You'll get 31 videos about different aspects of the Jewish holidays that are coming up. And also, if you're not in the Jew Curious school already, because everybody who's in the school is going to get immediate access to like the live versions of these High Holy Day classes. Those are going to be recorded, and then I'm going to share in another class. I haven't done this before, so I don't know exactly how it's going to work or whether it's going to work. But I'm going to take the videos that we record in the Jew Curious School and make them available to people outside the school. And that's a class that I'm calling Secrets of the High Holidays, so that you don't zone out or fall asleep. And I was like, what's the biggest problem to solve around the high holidays? It's not like, oh, I understand something, but I want to understand more. I think the biggest pain point for the holidays is zoning out and falling asleep or missing out. And you could judge other people's punctiliousness or religiosity, like, oh, everybody should love everything all the time. Everybody should be equally learned and excited about stuff. I know plenty of people, myself included, have been super excited to go to Rosh Hashanah services or Yom Kippur services and then zone out or fall asleep or get stuck or get embarrassed or feel like, oh my gosh, I want to be here. These holidays are important to me, but I have no idea what's going on, right? I don't know what this prayer means or that prayer means. I don't know what's special about this day versus Shabbat or another holiday. And being a rabbi in a synagogue for being a rabbi for 5+ years now, being a synagogue rabbi for most of that, I've heard people say, I love being with other people, but the services are so boring. And I thought, okay, where does boring come from? Like, I like services. I wouldn't get into this business if I didn't. But I like services. So if people are bored, what does that mean? And my guess was boredom comes from a couple of different places. First off, if you're expecting to be entertained and you're not being entertained, that can be boring. Like if you go to a movie and it's supposed to be a good movie, but it stinks, it's not funny or it's not exciting, it's not scary, whatever you were expecting, and it doesn't meet your expectations, that could leave you bored. But I think what is more likely is that when people go to a religious service and they get bored, it's because they're not really understanding what's going on. And I'm not saying that to brag that services are super awesome. Some places they are boring, even if you know everything that's going on. But I think a lot of the time is we tune out because we don't connect, because it's not obvious to us like what is exactly happening right now. And that leaves people cold. And it says, I love Rosh Hashanah, I love Yom Kippur, I love the technology of self-improvement going on here right now, but I don't understand the service. I don't understand where these traditions come from. And so I wanted to, and I, because I've had this problem and I've suffered through things, or I've skipped services altogether, high holidays in the past, because just being in the synagogue wasn't connecting for me. I wanted to help solve this problem for other people. And so what I did was I put together this class. It's starting in the Jew Curious School today. God willing, it's going to be available generally tomorrow, still connecting all the internet pipes for it. I put this class together so that by understanding where our traditions come from, by understanding how you can best prepare for the holidays and then enjoy the holidays while they're happening, my goal is that this coming fall holiday season becomes the most meaningful that you've had, because you will come sort of prepared and in the know and understanding what's happening. Oh, Psuki de Zimra, I know what that's all about. Unatana Tokef, like this prayer, I know what that's about. This speaks to me because I'm already familiar with it. We're gonna hear the shofar 100 times today because it's Rosh Hashanah. Now I know why, and it becomes all the more meaningful and thus all the more enjoyable for me. So my goal is, by putting this class together, that I give people the information that they need and the preparation that they need so that they get the most out of this high holidays season that they've ever gotten before. And if it works, let me know. If you actually do get more out of the high holidays because you've taken this class, I'd love to have that data so that I know if the class is working or if I need to improve it for next year. So that's what's up. That's what's happening right now. My goal here as we enter the high holidays season, and it's not just about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. There's also Sukkot going on and Simchat Torah and finishing the Torah and turning it over and starting over again. So many exciting things going on. So in order to help prepare you for that, free for everybody, we've got the Jewish Fall Holiday Challenge. I put a link up there, but it's just rabbijohncarrier.com/fall, F-A-L-L. Anybody can participate in that. Doesn't cost anything. You get 31 videos. And if you sign up in time, like before September 9th, you're entered to win a few Jewish books, if that's the kind of thing that you're into. And so anybody can participate in that. Additionally, starting tomorrow, there will be a class available that you can sign up for and take the class and have hopefully the best high holidays experiences you've ever had. There is a modest tuition for that class just to support the technology. But so that class will be available to anybody to sign up for. And if you're in the Jew Curious School, that's already going to be included in the curriculum anyway, along with all the other classes that we have in there. The Intro to Judaism class, classes on Jewish thought, Jewish space, Jewish time, classes on God, and all sorts of things, and our ongoing weekly Torah study. So, plus the community, plus the great community. Let's see. Nawa64 says, Rabbi, suggestions if we are not near a shul or might not could afford tickets for the high holiday services an hour away. So that's two separate questions. This is a great question. I'm going to make sure I address this in the class as well. But since you asked on Ask Me Anything Day, I'm going to answer it for you right now. So there's two sort of separate questions, and they both pertain to accessibility to high holy day services. One is like, I can't get to a synagogue at all, and there's like a physical barrier between me and the synagogue. There are, if you are comfortable with using technology on Chagim or on Yontav, there's lots of synagogues that are streaming their services, including, I believe, the synagogue that I'm working in right now, Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. We've just got all the stuff installed. We're going to be practicing with it before the high holy days. But once, God willing, once the high holidays come, we'll be able to live stream our services for anybody to watch. And it's not going to be public. I think you need a link or need special access to sign up for in order to see it. And those are just sort of for security reasons. But there are lots of synagogues that are live streaming their high holy day services, and including the one where I'm teaching this year. So check that out as an opportunity. If you want to, there's lots of things you could do at home. You can pray at home. You can pray at home by yourself, or you could pray at home with your family. My favorite part about Rosh Hashanah, I like services. My favorite part about Rosh Hashanah is the food. And you could have that at home. You can have a big dinner on Erev Rosh Hashanah, like the night Rosh Hashanah starts. People have big dinners, and you have apples and honey as an appetizer for that. Have round challah and sweet foods and all sorts of things. And you can eat, extravagantly for dinner and lunch for 2 days. That's a very Rosh Hashanah thing to do. If you're looking to participate or observe a prayer service, there's lots of live streaming things going on. The other piece that I want to address is the other kind of accessibility, and that is sort of economic accessibility. Yes, there are synagogues that charge for tickets, or often how it's a couple of different ways. If you are a regular dues-paying member to a synagogue, and sometimes people chafe at that, like, why do you have to pay to pray? It's like, that's not what it's about at all. Different houses of worship organize support differently. Christian churches often do it through passing an offering plate or tithes, where members pledge part of their income. Synagogues these days often do it by an annual assessment of dues, and this is to keep the lights on. This is to keep the building in good shape. This is to pay the custodians who are plunging the toilets and taking the trash out. This is to pay the clergy. This is to pay all sorts of people it takes, not just to run the synagogue throughout the whole year, But then what they do, so if you're a regular member, then the tickets are kind of included in your membership. If you're not a member of a synagogue, but you want to attend a synagogue for high holidays, synagogues have done this thing for decades now where they sell tickets, meaning like you're not here throughout the year. You're only coming 1 or 2 days a year for this. So we'll charge you for that separately instead of assessing dues. And then that does two things. First off, it helps pay all the people, because synagogues will hire extra staff and have additional expenses, security guards, catering, like all different things go into these high holidays that are expensive. And so people charge for tickets. That said, it's a rarer and rarer occurrence that a synagogue will turn you away for not being able to pay. I would, if the sort of sticker price of those tickets is a barrier to entry, what I would do is talk to the synagogue, but you would otherwise go to that synagogue. I would talk to the synagogue and see if you could get some sort of consideration. Most synagogues would rather not have that cost be a barrier. Like they charge the ticket price that just makes it easy for everybody to make a decision. But if you would attend, but the ticket price is too high, talk to them. Most synagogues will give you some consideration. I won't say all because I don't know all synagogues, but no synagogue that I would go to would say, "Oh, if you can't pay the ticket price, you can't come in." But nevertheless, even if it's zero, I would talk to them and try to get tickets, because tickets are also used for space planning to make sure that they don't promise more people can come in than they actually physically safely have space for. It's also good for security, because getting that ticket, you register, they know it's you coming, and that's just a safety and security issue, especially when hate crimes and things like that are on the rise nationally year over year. So you should, if you're not a temple member or a synagogue member, you should get tickets. If getting tickets, if you're going to attend services, you should get tickets so that you're registered there. You're not going to get any hassle at the door. You're not going to have to necessarily carry ID with you if you have the ticket. But don't let cost be an issue. And if still you don't want to go, or if it's too far away for you, live streaming is a good solution. But there's also all sorts of things you can do without ever going to the synagogue, and that is you could have big dinners and big lunches for the holiday. You can pray. You can make tshuva without going to a synagogue. It's convenient to go to a synagogue and make tshuva because there's like 1,000 people there, and like chances are whoever you upset is probably there, so you could go say you're sorry on that day. But I hope that's helpful for you. I mean, this is just knowing the nature of this community, how we've gotten to know each other online. There's a lot of people who learn with us who are not physically close to a synagogue, right? And so I want to make sure that wherever you're coming from, wherever you are, you have maximum access to the learning that we do together, and to the community that we're building together. So I hope that's helpful for you. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up today's thing. We've been going for almost 2 hours now, so it's almost lunchtime. Yeah, if I start late, I've got to end late too. So, in any case, thank you everybody for being here today. This has been a fantastic session of Ask Me Anything, and I got more than I bargained for at some points here. We talked about afterlife. We talked about death. We talked about God. We talked about Talit Katan. We talked about the Dome of the Rock a little bit. We talked about getting some swag, getting some t-shirts up in here. Really appreciate everybody who's signed up for the Jewish Fall Holiday Challenge. Again, I just connected the pipes on that thing, so if you don't get an email right away, or if you don't get your first email, video email tomorrow, ping me on Facebook, ping me on this channel, let me know. You can send a message through Twitch, just like you can send a message through Facebook and things like that. So want to make sure everybody's who wants to be involved in this can be. So sign up for that. Stay tuned for the special course I'm doing, Secrets of the High Holidays, so that you don't zone out or fall asleep. But also know, if you're already part of the Jew Curious School, that's already included in your membership. So don't sign up for that class when you're already going to be getting it someplace else. So I know it's confusing, a lot of things going on. Feel free to ask me any questions about it you want. Send me a message through Twitch. Super dope to learn with all of you today. I never know how Ask Me Anything is going to go, and yet we wind up having a good conversation for a couple of hours. So thanks for being here, and as Kay Dixie says, please support this podcast by subscribing or throwing bits. We got some good bits today, and really delighted to learn with all of you. You don't have to pay a dime to participate in these Twitch things. I just want to be really clear about that. You're welcome here, whether you're lurking or chatting, whether you're donating or not donating. Always, when you do donate, it helps us make a better show, but it doesn't cost a thing to be a part of this community. So I'm really grateful for everybody who's here, and everybody especially who supports each other in the chat. This is the best learning community that I've ever been a part of, so I'm continually grateful for that. Drungeons and Dagons, throw some bits. Glad I was able to make it. Glad to see you here. Saw some new people today. Saw some kind of new people, but nice to see you again. And some of the old home crowd was here today as well. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up in gratitude. Just wish all of you all the blessings in the world, and just my heart expands every time I'm here. Not in a physiologically risky way. I've already been to the cardiologist for that, but my heart expands spiritually in learning with all of you. So thank you for that. And until next time, heroes, peace.